And for those who enjoy this channel and would love to support us financially, please feel free to hit that donate link. We'd greatly appreciate it. God bless.
Okay, well, it looks like we are live, guys. We got a really exciting debate tonight. Brother Smokey Saint, we got David Neff. Did Jesus fulfill Messianic prophecy? So we've got a lot of people looking forward to this one. I know I'm looking forward to it as well. Both debaters, David and Smokey, are no stranger to debates. They've both had lots of debates under their belt. So this is for sure going to be one to remember. Before we give them the opportunity, just for brief introductions, to kind of break the ice, I'll go over a few announcements. I've been working overtime trying to get some good debates for you guys. Tomorrow, it'll be an early one, 3 p.m. EST and 2 p.m. Central. We've got Nephilim Free and Dr. Ron Garrett, who's been on here before. They're going to be debating creation or evolution. What does the evidence say? So that's one to look forward to. We just confirmed today John Maddox and Godless Engineer for their much anticipated debate. That's going to be closer to the end of the month, August 17th, it looks like. So I'll keep you guys posted on that one, but another one to look forward to. And next week, one I'm really looking forward to, we're going to have Dr. Ron Garrett back to debate Paul Price from CMI, Creation Ministries. They are going to debate genetic entropy. So lots to look forward to. There's a few more that are not 100% confirmed. We've got Dr. Steve Austin, PhD in geology. He's informed me that he's ready to debate as long as it's a fellow PhD in geology. So I've reached out to a few geologists, and hopefully we'll have him an opponent by the end of the week. So enough for me, though. We're going to get right into this debate. As always, I like to kind of break the ice. Therefore, why don't we start with Smokey? Just go over what you're doing at your channel. Give us a little bit of information about you, maybe some previous debates you've had, whatever you feel is necessary. Go ahead, Smokey. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, sure, man. Hey, I appreciate it, SFT. Thanks so much for having me, man. Yeah, I'm Smokey Saint. I try to slay terrible arguments on both the theist side and the atheist side. I do live shows every single week, usually every single day. I open people to usually come in, pitch their opinions live and stream with open mic shows all the time. So I like challengers. I like people to come challenge my perspective, pitch their own, and hopefully we all learn from each other and glean something profitable. So that's the type of environment. I do have a sharp side, as some of the people, if they've seen some of my debates, they know. But I try to use it in a measured level, and try to take my guidance from the Holy Spirit. So as long as atheists don't tend to be disrespectful, dishonest, or cross me, they won't get cut. So so generally that's just me. Please feel free, come over to my channel, say hi, pitch questions, give comments, whatever you like to do, and come join one of my live shows. It's a good time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that, Smokey. We appreciate you giving us your time tonight for this debate. Much needed debate, that's for sure. David, thanks for being here again. You're no stranger to this channel. So a little bit about you.
Oh, well, once again, I want to thank Stan for having me back on his channel. It's a great honor to be back on here. And Stan and Smokey, this is our first time debating each other, so thank you for agreeing to debate me. And once again, thank you, Praise, for being an incredible producer and for helping produce these videos. So coming up on my channel next month, I will be debating Kent Hovind on radiometric dating in the age of the Earth, and we will also be debating on the geological column and the fossil record. So a lot of stuff to be looking forward to with me and Kent Hovind.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that introduction there, David. We'll be sure to check out that debate at the end of the month. Coco Puffer already given the old super chat. Thank you so much, brother. $10. Once again, we appreciate it. He says, SFT, work more overtime. These are good debates. That's my goal, to bring you guys as many good debates as I can. So now that we've broken the ice, we are going right into opening statements. I forgot one thing to the audience. Tag myself with your questions. We'll have a little Q&A at the end of this debate. And if you tag me, I'll make sure that we get to your question, of course. So Smokey being the affirmative, we're going to give him the floor I guess whatever time he takes, we will give David equal time, and then we're going to jump into a free-flowing organic dialogue on the at the topic at hand. So go ahead, Smokey.
Beautiful, appreciate it. And by the way, mine isn't super long, so I mean, if his goes a little over, I don't want that to be a deal. Like, let him, because I know he's got a slideshow and stuff. So just whatever he's got to do, certainly I can see to let him do whatever argument he wants to put out there. I certainly want to try to be able to address to the best of my ability. So just to put that out there, and thank you for that, SFT, and thank you for that opening.
Awesome.
Appreciate it. So sincerest thanks to everyone for being here tonight. Thank you so much to my beloved brethren for hosting this debate. I have the utmost respect for SFT as a debater, and I am overjoyed with the fellowship that I have found among you all. So thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart, truly. Of course, sincerest thanks to David Neff for showing up for this debate. Atheists are not often bold enough to pitch their arguments without a keyboard, and I appreciate you doing this. Seriously, it definitely shows that you have some character and integrity and a desire to back up your points and pursue reason and have them tested in the open plane of open exchange of ideas. So I appreciate you for that. Thank you, sir. Well, let me get right into it. So naturally, this is actually a rather difficult topic, debate topic for me to prepare in a very general scope. The potential angles of attack and skepticism are really too many to number, once considering the near 300 messianic prophecies that Christians claim that Christ fulfilled. In a roundabout way, skeptics seem to be reassured that if they could falsify one of the prophecies with enough reasonable doubt, they believe they are justified in doubting the others with a higher level of personal justified incredulity, but many times may be practicing confirmation bias in the process. If you are looking for the outer edge of reasonable probabilities for reasons to doubt the fulfillment of these prophecies, you are already showing a willingness to entertain a bias to the side of the argument you personally prefer, as opposed to the one that seems to be the most logical, plausible, or probable. After all, why pick the more unlikely explanation unless there were a personal motivator or perhaps maybe a hidden presupposition? I suppose in some ways our wonderful Father made it a little more difficult for us to actually argue to some skeptics about the confidence we have in the fulfillment of prophecies. He could have only given a few or a dozen messianic prophecies, and we would be able to be better prepared for a more isolated set of challenges to the claim of fulfilled prophecies. There were no prophecies of Muhammad, and even though he tried to claim them, they have been thoroughly annihilated by capable modern scholars like Christian Prince, Sam Shamoon, and David Wood. Maybe some things would be simpler if we were like the other religions with no viable claim to fulfilled prophecy, while we have an orgy of evidence of over 300 instances across dozens of centuries by many different writers in completely different time frames, having never met each other, all predicting the actions and identity of a man that wouldn't come for hundreds of years and was then accurately recorded with pristine consistency to the massive volume of prophetic texts that preceded him, with no real viable challenges to any failure of any of these prophecies. Like I said, my opponent can take any number of angles of attack, and I want to be able to address them to the best of my ability, to the glory of the kingdom of God, and by the power of the Holy Spirit. So I will make my case for my side as simply as I can in its base form right now. Christ and the apostles encouraged challenge to the identity of the Messiah through the fulfillment of prophecies of the Pentateuch. Fabricators or falsifiers tend to not do this. They don't like challenges and they don't like specifics. The apostles and Christ thoroughly embraced both. We don't have just a few vague instances of fulfilled prophecy, but many very vivid and specific pieces of messianic prophecy that nearly defy any reasonable claims of denial, such as, for instance, Psalms 22 or Isaiah 53, as well as Christ's consistently thematic claims of his divinity, which are echoed all throughout Scripture. The very theme of history and the abundance of prophetic instances with perfect synergy throughout all of the text and authorship, even if it was fabricated, would be a feat of supernatural accomplishment, which flawed men could not possibly hope to accomplish. Lesser religions the world over have certainly tried and failed. As atheists tend to call these disciples a bunch of stupid, uneducated fishermen, It is quite a compliment to turn around and accuse them of what would easily be the most impressive and thoroughly consistent hoax of all time that couldn't even hope to be matched in our modern era. I hope I will get to see more tonight than what I typically see, which is desperate sophistry to cling to the most unlikely of explanations in order to justify cynical denial of the obvious. Christ is indeed the Messiah. And I yield.
Thank you there, Smokey. Beautiful opening. Well said, well spoken. And we will now move on to David. David, I know you have a slideshow presentation. So as Smokey so graciously offered, you take your time with it, as much time as you need, and then we'll jump right into open discussion. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
All right, let me get my thing up. Well, once again, Smokey, that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for debating with me once again. This is probably the most important question one will have to answer in your lifetime. I will greatly concede that. And I will be negating the resolution today that Jesus Christ is not the Messiah and he failed to fulfill the Messianic prophecies. First, let's take a look at some of the proof texts that are used by Christians. When I was a fundamentalist Christian, the proof texts were quite convincing to me at first glance. But when I delved into them and really began to study the type of prophecies that Christians claim, I found that oftentimes that they all fall into one or more of the categories. Either the passage is mistranslated, the passage is out of context, the passage is not a prophecy, or the passage does not exist. I will be demonstrating all four of these in my opening. Mistranslated, born of a virgin. Isaiah 7:14, behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son and shall call his name Emmanuel. However, when we look at the actual Hebrew, we see that the word being used is ha'alma, which means the young woman, not betula, which is a virgin. In fact, the Hebrew text is very clear that the woman is already pregnant and thus cannot be a virgin. The NRSV properly translates, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Look, the young woman is with child and shall bear a son and shall call his name Emmanuel. Out of context, hate without a cause. John 15:25 quotes Psalm 69, verse 4. And was to fulfill the word that is written in their law, they hated me without a cause. That is from Psalm 69, verse number 4. However, when you read the very next verse, it says, O God, you have known my folly. The wrongs I have done are not hidden from you. When we look at the context of Psalm 69, it is very clear that this cannot be a prophecy of Jesus. Well, Christians want to admit that if they use this psalm to prove that Jesus is the Messiah, what wrongs did he do? What was Jesus' folly? This is the danger of taking passages out of context. Another one that is not a prophecy is that there will be no broken bones. John 19, verse 36. These things occurred so that the scripture might be fulfilled. None of his bones shall be broken. This is a quote from Exodus 12, verse 46. And the Passover sacrifice shall be eaten in one house. You shall not take any of the animal outside your house, and you shall not break any of its bones. So once again, we see that this is not a prophecy at all, but rather it is a law about how to fulfill the Passover sacrifice. And finally, a passage that does not exist is Matthew 2, verse 23. There he made his home a town in Nazareth so that it may be fulfilled. He will be called a Nazarene. 404 error, prophecy not found. What are the real messianic prophecies? The real Messiah will be a spiritual political leader in Israel. He will be married with children. He will be announced by Elijah. He will rebuild the temple. He will gather the Jews back to Israel. He will reunite Judah and Israel. He will establish world peace. He will bring about universal knowledge of God. And finally, he will revive the dead. Clearly, none of these prophecies has been fulfilled, and thus cannot be fulfilled by Jesus. Therefore, Jesus is definitely not the Jewish Messiah and did not fulfill any of the required prophecies. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that opening, David. Great opening presentations from the both of you. Clear, concise. Thanks for the visuals there, David. Real quick, it might have just been me at certain times. It sounded like you were a little bit in and out, David. Just for the dialogue portion, maybe make sure you're just speaking right into the microphone so we can hear the points and enjoy the dialogue. So enough for me, though. If there are any other issues, just praise, point them out. We'll do our best to fix them. So I guess David just finished his opening statement. We can hand it over to Smokey if he has a couple points he wants to make or a question he wants to start it off with. But the discussion portion is all yours, guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, great. Sure. So, Smokey, where do you want to
Smokey, are
begin?
you on mute, brother?
Sorry, I was on mute. I apologize. I did that. That was my bad. You guys hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, and take it off from here, and I'll take it on this. Yeah, that was interesting. Thank you for that, Neff. You don't mind me calling you Neff, right?
Sure, go right ahead, Neff. I mean, hopefully nobody confuses it with the infamous Nephilim 3.
Oh, yeah, that is one of those things. Okay, I'll call you David. Okay, David. All right.
Yeah,
No, I appreciate.
I just want to point out that one of the people, one of the moderators at the very start of the live stream said David Neff is the anti-Neff.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, we call you anti-Neff then. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, well, anyway, thanks for that presentation. I think it kind of drawed back into my opening, which I was kind of appreciative for, in the sense that it seemed like you were going to take the more vague potential claim texts for prophecy and kind of use that as the support structure for incredulity of the other more specific texts, which you really only touched on one. And I don't want to spend a bunch of time arguing things that even Christians themselves argue, which may possibly be a prophetic proof text. I prefer to look at the ones that seem to have a higher probability of all Christians tending to believe, yeah, this is viably not just a vague foreshadowing, but an actual prophetic claim to what's going to be coming forward. So on that note, you had mentioned Isaiah 7:14. Now, there's something very interesting about that, and I have looked into it a little bit here and there, ever so briefly, brushed up on it today, because of course I didn't have tons of time. So just so I can understand your perspective and your pitch, because it almost sounds like the same as the typical kind of Jewish defeater that's usually thrown at us. Is that kind of your source of that?
Yes, I was very active with Jews or Judaism for quite some time.
Okay.
So that is definitely where the bulk of my arguments come from. However, it should be noted that you were talking about the major proof texts. All of the prophecies that I presented to you are cited in the New Testament. So clearly, so obviously these are prophecies that the early Christians.
No. I think you're misunderstanding my objection. Is that you, in your literalistic interpretation, might be trying to focus this out of the realm of Jewish hyperbole. And we do this frequently in terms of digesting literature of ancient cultures. To me now, maybe it's actually more sophisticated and you only pitched me the surface version, but there's something wrong with that. Now, we agree that this is a prophecy given to Ahaz, an evil king at the time,
Right.
who really denied not even having a prophecy, and this was delivered to him saying there will be a young woman.
I think Parthenos. Actually, that word is also used to describe Dinah after she was raped in the book of Genesis.
Exactly. So there's no real issue of that being taken specifically or isolated as a virgin from textual criticism. It's the word that they have to correlate effectively enough at the time. And it wasn't a statement. It was more of a statement of that she was just a young woman. more than which is the whole backbone of the argument anyway, which is that the Septuagint word for this couldn't be virgin, it would be a young woman, because it also referred in textual criticism to women who were not virgins, right? That's the backbone of the argument. So you're pitching that as the idea. So you're saying that because of the word alma instead of betula, because betula is what refers to the actual, marriage state of the woman, correct?
Betula is for entire context of Isaiah chapter number 7. Of course, in the beginning passage is that there is a war, there's a political issue with the Northern Kingdom and forming an alliance. And so the
Well, I
Northern
think we
Kingdom,
kind of already established. Are you using the
right,
context? I think we already established the context.
right. Well, let's establish the context. I don't think we talked about like what actually is happening in Isaiah chapter number 7.
Well, okay.
Um,
Let's simplify, because I don't know if we have to go that road just yet. So let's
okay.
take it back to where I was going. This is basically saying a young woman will conceive a child, and this will be a sign to you, correct?
Well, I'm just going to
No,
jump in there real quick, David, before you say anything, because just for, I think, about 15 seconds there, I'm not sure whose end it was on. There was some slight from the audience. They were saying it was cutting out. But also, David, I think your screen might still be in share mode. Maybe unshare it. And
I do not see it. It is not in share mode on my end, which is weird.
okay, because I just see that the main boxes are still black. Usually indicates that it's in screen share mode. Maybe Praise can fix that, but looks like the audio is back now. I just want to make sure the audience can hear the points and arguments you're making. So I apologize, gentlemen, but
Okay.
David, on to you.
All right, sure. Yeah, so let's just talk about the actual Hebrew real quick, because the Hebrew actually states that the young woman is already pregnant. Let me pull up the actual text real quick.
I'm sorry. What are you saying? What is the argument that she's already with child? I'm missing the point
Yeah,
here.
yeah. So as the NRSV properly translated, the young woman is already with child. She is already pregnant at the time. It says, "Hine ha'alma hara lo yoledet bein va'ikrat shemo Immanuel." So the young woman is with child, and she shall bear a son, and shall call his name Immanuel. Standing,
Okay.
is it still saying? Is it still saying that I'm in share mode?
Yeah, well, it looks like the visual on the actual
Let me
screen is still share mode. Praise, you know what's going on? I think Praise.
let me try doing this and do this. Okay,
Yeah,
hold on now.
Praise
Hold on.
oftentimes falls asleep during debate, so Praise. Just make sure you're on top of it. If I'm going to look in the chat if there's any more audio issues. It looks like let me see. It looks like it's good now. So, but I'll just I want to make sure everyone's hearing your points, and a good discussion so far, gentlemen. Continue.
Okay. Yeah. Here's my issue with it right now, because now he's playing games to me with tenses, and this is what the rabbis tend to do. This is a conversation with God and Ahaz talking about a future sign that's going to be given to him in the future. And you're saying the interpretation of the text is the sign is a woman that's already pregnant. Now,
Well, the sign. Hold on.
Okay.
Can I address that point real quick?
Okay.
Sure. So let's actually talk about what this sign actually is, because let's actually look at the rest of the chapter. Cream and honey he shall eat when he knows to reject the bad and choose the good. For when the lad does not yet know to reject the bad and choose the good, the land whose kings you dread shall be abandoned. The Lord shall bring upon you and upon your people and upon your father's house days which have not come since the days that Ephraim turned away from Judah, namely the king of Assyria. So the sign isn't a miraculous birth, but rather the time frame for which the child will be growing up.
Neff, I'm sorry, but that's just asinine. I apologize, but that's just the most ridiculous argument I've ever heard. It's something like maybe Rabbi Tovia Singer would say. You're talking about so the sign is in the text of the verse. You don't get to just replace it with something, several verses down and saying, no, the sign that they said in 7:14, that's not it. No, it's not the woman being with a son. It's this thing down here later on. I mean, come on, man. Like that's ridiculous to me. Like first of all, what type of sign? Let me ask you this, because seriously, this is where it gets ridiculous for me. I'm sorry, but what type of sign is it for just a woman to get pregnant? Like that happens every day. What type of sign is that? What is God saying? He's saying some young woman's going to get pregnant. Like the idea that you're completely ignoring any type of potential supernatural connotation to the fact of a statement that would be just a natural occurrence is a little bit weird to me. The apostle writers, I'm sorry, but they realized that this was talking about a virgin birth. And by the way, the context of what you're talking about for the sake of the identity of this woman, well, she wasn't married yet, was she? She was betrothed. She was pledged to be married. So a statement, what you're doing is you're requiring the prophecy to be legalistically specific, as in you would only find Betula being brought up in a verse that was specifically talking about their status for marriage. And the marriage was not the component issue of the prophecy. It was her state of virginity, being a young woman and having something, and I take Michael Heiser's approach to this too, is that there was the idea that this birth, even when presented to Ahaz, because Ahaz was an evil king, okay, he wasn't believing anything God said anyway. It wasn't really ultimately for him. It was a sign for the Jews. It was a sign of a promise that there was going to be something miraculous coming down through the line of David, and it was going to be a woman having a son and conceiving a son. Now, what that exact miraculous thing is might not be clarified till later. And I'm going to give you an example of why you're being ridiculous in requiring this much specificity. Okay.
Can I before you go on, can I actually answer some of your points and try to answer this with a question real quick?
Okay.
Sure. So what exactly is a sign? So a sign has to be seen, correct? So there has to be a sign here. The sign of the prophecy has to be seen. So the question is, obviously, who saw the virgin birth? How do we know Jesus was actually born of a virgin? Because even as Luke...
How would you know? How would you know?
Exactly. That's the exact point that I'm trying to make. The idea of Jesus being born of a virgin...
No. I'm saying, how would you know? How would you know? How would you be able? What evidence would you need to be convinced? Because here's the thing: I hear this from atheists all the time, and it's not good enough. It's not sufficient. I need more. Okay, all right, fine. But you know what? I don't like playing that game. Okay, because it's just a constantly moving goalpost. I don't mean to be disrespectful, Neff. I appreciate you being here. I get a little wired. I'm burnt out here. Okay, so I apologize. Okay, but here's the thing: I don't like sophistry and I don't like dishonesty. And see, I've heard this garbage from Jews for years because I am a Jew partially, and I've argued with Jews for years. Okay, and this is the type of stuff I hear them cling to in desperation to try and ignore what's blatantly there and staring them in the face. Now, are you Orthodox Jew?
No, I am Reformed Humanist Jew. Okay. I actually did convert to Judaism, so long story there, but I still identify myself as Jewish, so I would consider myself...
All right, so you're actually a brother. You're a brother to me. Okay.
Yes.
Right. So, and I've always seen that when I've argued with the Jews as brothers. So, but brothers, you know how us Jews argue, right? We get a little fiery, don't we? Sometimes, stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. So this is the thing for me too here. Like, I hope you kind of saw my original point in the argument that, like, when you take it to a certain level to deny it, like, here's the thing. You could say to me, here's this reasonable defeater. Like let's say I even gave you some of your points that I don't think are really good, but let's, for the sake of the argument, say I gave them to you. Okay. Now you have hundreds of others to also do the same thing, where you're taking the outlier. You're taking the extremist or the absolutist or the fundamentalist or whatever version it is, you're choosing it. The one that steps outside, that's the one you're picking. And you're doing it for all of them across the board. And you're denying all of them across the board. Does that not strike you as a red flag, a concern for potential confirmation bias?
Well, I mean, of course not. I mean, the thing is, as I mentioned in my very first slide, you can present to me any of the proof texts used by Christians, and all of them have one or more of the problems that I mentioned. And again, the prophecies that I specifically chose to bring up are the prophecies that are cited in the New Testament.
Okay. And your issue is that what? They're not fulfilled specifically enough, that they weren't delivered specific. Let me give you my example now of the Matrix, because now I think you need to understand where I'm really coming from, because this is what I've seen from the Jewish argumenters doing is require, and the atheists too, because the atheists have picked up the Jewish arguments, and what they've done is they said we can take it to this level of specificity and we can deny the claim. But I'm gonna let you know how I perceive the necessity of some of the vagueness of prophecy, because I don't believe in a predeterministic universe. Now, I don't know what you believed when you were a theistic believer or something. I don't know if you believed everything is deterministic like the Calvinists, or if you believe things is free will and open-ended, but I'm very much a free will component. So I understand that when God is planning how to deliver prophecies, that the exact words and specificity that is used is tailored for a very specific reason. So let me give you an example. Are you familiar with the movie The Matrix?
No, I'm not familiar with it. I've heard of it, but I have never seen
Okay.
it.
Let me describe to you a scene if I possibly can. And I'll try
Sure.
to, if you have an issue with it, just stop me. But here's the scene, okay? You have Neo, who is the hero of the story, walking in to meet the Oracle. Oracle is this all-knowing being who just kind of knows everything about everything and predicts the future and stuff, right?
Right.
Is able to prophesize. Excuse me. So he walks in and introduces himself, and she says, "Oh, hi, how you doing? Welcome. I was expecting you. Oh, and by the way, don't worry about the vase." And so he, startled by that statement of thinking, "Oh, what vase could she be talking about?" He turns around and ends up knocking over a vase behind him. And then he turns around to her and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry." And she said, "I told you, don't worry about it." And then he says, "Okay, well, how did you know?" And she says, "Well, what'll really bake your noodle later is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't have told you?" And see, this is the understanding of the necessity of the brilliance, the sociological brilliance of God in the methodology and planning in which he delivered his prophecy, and also the hyperbolic culture in which he delivered it to, and an appreciation of their language and structure and imagery. And what I see many times is an abandonment of those traditions to try to cling on to, again, the probabilities outside of thematic consistency. I yield. Sorry.
Sure, go right ahead. And sure, I guess let me kind of rephrase my issue here. Let me try and kind of rephrase myself, and so you can better understand my position. Basically, I have two major problems. The first is that when we actually look at the prophecies that are clearly of the Messiah, such as being a political leader, being announced by Elijah, being rebuilding the temple, all of these are very, very, very specific. He will gather Jews back to Israel, reunite Judah and Israel, bring about world peace and universal knowledge of God, and revive the dead. These are very specific prophecies. These are not vague. They are not open
Sure.
to any interpretation. And so it is pretty clear that these are very specific prophecies. And
I guess maybe I didn't catch the whole thing where we were going to specifically be kind of relying on the NSRV for the most part. Anyway, let's try to take this to a level. What you seem to be now doing is now pointing to a bunch of prophecies that Christ didn't fulfill, that the Christians believe are future prophecies to be fulfilled, like what was seen in the revelation of Jesus Christ. Is this your position?
sure. So let me rephrase this. And this is exactly the problem. The idea of a second coming simply doesn't jive with the Jewish scriptures. And more importantly, the second coming can easily be used by anyone who claimed to be the Messiah. I mean, of course, the Chabad Lubavitch, are you familiar with that cult?
Yeah, I do. But and I think probably what you might, maybe I
Yeah.
didn't make it clear. Maybe I didn't make my theme argument very clear on that regard. Like in terms of Jesus not just fulfilling the prophecies, but also the theme. I mean, maybe just let's sidetrack real quick, because this is something that was kind of on my mind to maybe bring up at the beginning, but let's maybe try to get it out just real quick. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I just want to throw it at you and see what your argument is. The time frame, the 70 weeks, Daniel. How do you, in terms of the specificity of the time and composition of the literature to match that type of really, really on point type of chronology? Go ahead. What is your take on that for me?
Yeah, sure. So let me just make a quick observation, and you'll see where I'm going with this before I actually get deep into the text. What I find interesting is that the New Testament itself never cites Daniel chapter 9, correct?
The New Testament itself as a reference back to it.
Yeah. Does it actually?
Well, there's lots of prophecies that we take that don't do that.
Right. Sure. So again, it's interesting that if this was indeed the slam dunk, point by point, this is the exact time and date of Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection. First of all, a very brief observation is that you would actually think that it would be mentioned in the New Testament, but that is not the case.
I'm sorry, what would be mentioned?
The Daniel chapter 9 prophecy, if it was actually prophesying what would happen to Jesus and the exact dates, that would definitely serve a mention in the New Testament. But of course, it is not there, and there's a reason why it's not there. Let's actually look at Daniel chapter 9 together, and
sure.
Let's just read it real quick. You can bear the age of Gabriel. Sure. So, in the beginning of his applications, the word came forth, and I have come to tell it to you, for you have desirable qualities. I'll contemplate the word and understand the vision. 70 weeks of years have been decreed upon your people and upon your city of your sanctuary to terminate the transgression and to end sin and to expedite iniquity and to bring eternal righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophet and to anoint your holy of holies. And you shall know and understand that from the emergence of the word to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed king shall be 7 weeks, and for 42 weeks it will be returned in the built street and moat built in troubled times. And after 62 weeks, the anointed one will be cut off, and he will be no more. And the people of the coming monarch will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and his end will come about by inundation, and until the end of the war, it'll be cut off into desolation. And he will strengthen a covenant for the princes for 1 week, and half the week he will abolish the sacrifices and meal offerings. On high among abominations will be the dumb one, and until the destruction and extermination befall the dumb one. Sure. So one of the things to notice is that there are actually two different people named here as anointed one. There's actually two different people. One is, of course, Cyrus. That's the first one that is actually called the Messiah, or a Messiah rather, in the book of Isaiah. And the second one, I believe, is I can't remember the name of that king. Much later, from the Jewish interpretation. But of course, there are a lot of issues.
Well, do you appreciate the idea that the Messiah claim includes the claim that the Messiah would be God? Do you accept that or no?
No, I do not accept that. From what I understand, the Messiah will just be another human king, like King David and all the others who will not be God himself.
I see. Okay, you know what? I see where our whole issue is here.
Right. So our very foundational issue, we have two very different understandings of who the Messiah is actually going to be, whether he'll be a human king or if he's going to be divine.
Let's discuss that briefly. Do you mind?
I'm sure. Go right ahead.
Okay. In Jesus's time, it was predicted that he would be essentially rejected. In fact, I forget where it is. I think it's Isaiah 42, where basically he's the suffering servant, and he's basically feeling like he's suffering in vain.
Isaiah 53,
laboring in vain. I don't think it's Isaiah 53. I think it's previous to that. He's claiming to here. Hold on. I think I have it. Hold on real quick. think I wrote it down. "42 or 49. It's one of those. Talking about him being the light to all the nations.
Okay, hold on.
Hold on. Where was I going initially? I'm sorry, I got distracted now because I was looking at something.
I think we were talking about the divinity of the Messiah, whether he'll
Right.
be
No, we
human.
were. Yeah. No, I was going down a road with that. I'm sorry. Give me a second. It's been a long day, man. It's been hot as heck here.
Oh, same here. It's been raining as well, so it's been way too hot and way too humid.
Oh yeah, humidity. Okay, so like in the divinity claim of Christ. So like in the idea that like the Jews. Okay, so the Jews were rejecting him, and we see that there was reference of prediction in Isaiah that he would be rejected, that he would have that feeling of being the servant that felt that he labored in vain, was the exact words. I'd have to find the verse. Labored in vain. And so then he's reassured further on in the passage that no, you're going to be a blessing to the entire world. So the prediction that Christ would be rejected for some reason was in there. Now, we understand, of course, from history that the Jews were expecting a political, physical, earthly Messiah. So they were expecting someone who was going to fulfill the role of liberating them from Rome. Now, when Christ wasn't fulfilling that, he was rejected. In fact, John the Baptist was even kind of having those potential momentary doubts because he was seeing while he was in jail, oh my gosh, all the Jews are rejecting him. And so he sent his servants out and he said to ask him, are you the Christ, the Messiah, or should we go look for another, as if a confirmation? And Jesus' answer was, hey, look at everything I'm doing. The blind see, the lame walk, so on and so forth. Demons are cast out. Go tell them what you're seeing and what's happening. And John, I'm sure, was very reassured by that. So the idea was that maybe, just possibly, the political leaders, the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, had only taken what I think you might be doing, which is taking the sections of the text and interpreting them to only want to see a physical earthly Messiah. And it was only the Jews, it was only the apostles and the disciples that were able to notice that Christ, through the lens of the Jewish scripture, through the full scope of it, that Christ was intended to be the suffering servant as well, not just the ruler to come in and take authority, but also someone to sacrifice himself, not just for the Jews, not just to serve the Jews like the Jews claim, but to be a light for the whole world, as we see that prominently referenced multiple times throughout Isaiah. So please, I yield.
All right, sure. So we're definitely way off track from my original opening statement. Sure. So I'm just trying to kind of get everything.
Well, I don't want
everything,
to discuss minutia, and I don't want to discuss sophistry, Neff. That's not what I'm here for, and I don't have time
right.
for it. I want to discuss the big picture.
Right.
I want to discuss the things that mean something. Like, I've heard
Right,
these
sure.
arguments. I've heard these, and I know you've heard these arguments a million times, and you've heard the refutations, and I've heard the refutations. What are we here? Are we here to have a paper fight, or are we here to have a real talk about these real issues? Because that's what I want to do.
Right. Definitely have a talk about these issues.
Okay.
So again, I guess if you want to go into Isaiah 40 to 40, basically it starts
Well,
in
I
Isaiah.
kind of want you to give an answer to the big picture situation of this. Because here's what I don't know if you're getting. Let me try and just zero a bullseye in on this.
Okay.
You guys are operating even with the stumbling stone before Zion. You guys are operating within a scope of predicted prophecy in our perspective. Okay, you have been. And on top of that, we believe that you're going to continue to operate that way, even in our final prophecy, Revelation, which says that the Messiah you guys are going to actually accept is going to be what we define as the Antichrist, which is your political leader that you say you're waiting for. So you have to understand how kind of almost heartbreaking it is for this, that when we ask the Jews, hey, what are you expecting? And they describe the Antichrist that we have in Revelation, it's a little bit unnerving for us. And it's also
All right,
validating to our faith.
So can we actually answer that? So can I answer that real quick?
Sure. No, go ahead. Yeah.
All right, sure. So why don't we actually go over some of these? And I really want to ask you, is this really what you believe to be the Antichrist? First, let's look at whether he will be a spiritual leader in Isaiah chapter number 2. Isaiah chapter number 2. beautiful, beautiful chapter. And it shall be at the end of days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be firmly established at the top of the mountain, and then shall be raised above the hills, and all the nations shall stream to it. And many people shall go, and they shall say, Come, let us go up to the Lord's mount, to the house of the Lord, to the God of Jacob, and let him teach us his ways, and we will go down his path. For out of Zion shall the Torah come from forth, and from the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge between the nations and reprove many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not live sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. O house of Jacob, come, let us go in the light of the Lord. Is this guy the Antichrist? Is this chapter really describing the Antichrist, bringing about universal peace, rebuilding the temple? Is this guy really the Antichrist?
I'm saying you guys will buy it for a time. That's the whole prophecy, bro. Is that the Jews are going to buy it for a time. It's going to be a concealed deception. That's the whole point of it. Like, you guys are going to go along with it, and then suddenly you're going to wake up. You're going to realize something's gone wrong. You'll be like, wait, this ain't right. We've made a mistake.
But that doesn't make any sense.
Well, well, you brought up Isaiah too. So, and that's a really important there's an important little chunk in there for me too. Okay. In terms of what you might be glossing over in terms of its importance, and certainly in terms of the context of the book, in my opinion, there's an important passage, Isaiah 2, 11 through 12.
Right.
And there's also another section. Bear with me. Let me get 11 through 12 first, real quick. Hold on.
Sure. So the haughty eyes of man will be humbled, and the height of men shall be bowed down, and the Lord alone shall be exalted on that day.
Beautiful.
When the Lord of hosts
so hold on, stop right there. So that, because that's the important part. You see where it says the Lord alone will be exalted in that day?
Correct.
Okay. So, and then pull up, hold on, pull up verses 17 to 18.
And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of man shall be humbled, and the Lord alone shall be exalted on that day.
Beautiful.
And all the idols shall completely pass away.
Okay, so there we have confirmation there twice that it's the Lord alone that's
Correct.
going to be exalted. Those words, exalted, lifted up, highly exalted, right?
Right.
That type of real like lofty type of speech is carried forth in the tone of this, that this is something really super honorable. I think you'd agree. We even have passages to say that this is a really high exalted person, pretty much above all of creation, right? You'd at least kind of give it that type of context.
Perhaps, but he's very much a elevated king, much like King David, and by the action of the Messianic prophecies being fulfilled,
Okay.
the nations of the world will realize that they were wrong, and the Lord is going to be exalted through their work. That's basically how I understand.
Okay. Now, but we do agree that from the passage in Isaiah 2 that the Lord alone will be exalted in that day, right?
Of course.
Okay. So now let's go. If you'll go ahead and pull it up, then you can go and read it from your translation. It's fine.
All right, sure.
Isaiah 52, 13 through 15.
Isaiah 52.
And just read the first line or so. I'll tell you when to stop, and then we'll take it from there.
Isaiah 52.
Yeah, Isaiah 52, verse 13. Yeah, verse 13.
All right. Behold, my servant shall prosper. He shall be exalted and lifted up, and he shall be very high.
Okay, so stop.
Okay,
so stop. So now we're talking about the suffering servant in this passage, right? Now, with the same type of verbiage, that same lofty exaltation is being used to talk about this. And it said only the Lord alone was going to be exalted on this day. But what we're seeing now, as we read further, that actually the Messiah is also being exalted, which fits our methodology, our theology pretty nicely. But go ahead and continue. Keep reading, please.
Sure. Behold, my servant shall prosper. He shall be exalted and lifted, and he shall be very high. And as many wondered about you, how mourned his appearance is from that of any man, and his feature from that of people. So shall he cast down many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For what they have not been told them they saw, and at what they had not heard they gazed.
Okay. Now, do you see the part going down where next the verse let's see, bear with me. I think it's 15, where surely he took up our infirmities, carried our sorrows, yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, and he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. Now, I'm trying to understand from your perspective the idea that what is the suffering of this servant that is worthy to be supposedly, I guess, your political leader, because we're talking about your Messiah, the Messiah of the Jews. How do you contextualize this type of suffering in the idea that you're supposed to have a prominent, powerful world leader who's going to come in, knock over the authorities that possibly, stand over the Jews, liberate them as a world authority, and present himself over the earth? What is the dynamic exactly where this servant is going to be rejected, hurt, and made to suffer for the sake of being the light of the entire world? Help me contextualize that in your view of what the Messiah is going to do.
Sure. So I guess in order to really fully understand this passage, do you mind if I zoom out a little bit and look at all of the
Yeah, no, and by the way, I've kind of been going on a bit, and I apologize for that. It's kind of the nature of my tone and mood, and just kind of where I've been the last. I'm burnt out, bro. I apologize. I want to let you.
I totally understand.
Like
I totally understand.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. If you feel that way, I apologize. I'm really not trying to be that way, and I'm not trying to be dismissive. I'm just trying to I want to spend time on the important things. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I didn't want this to just be a debate about a bunch of minutia and a bunch of random verses and little minor claims and is it hyperbole? Is it specific? Is it this? Is it I just don't want to do that. I wanted something with a little more substance and broad range and conversation. So I apologize. Please take as much time as you want. And I won't say anything until you yield.
Okay, sure. So let me just pull up my notes about Isaiah 53. I have some notes here to pull up. I definitely think this is one of the most moving passages in the Hebrew Bible.
And by the way, and just to make it maybe a little more on point and clear, and I know you're going to pull up references, and I'm totally cool for that. But I want you, when you're pitching it to me, I really want you to be pitching at me not just arguments from authority, but what you actually believe, right. Even if it's not the majority position, but just pitch it to me as it makes sense, because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for your reconciliation of what this is kind of pitching from your worldview of what you anticipate the Messiah to be.
Sure. Let's see here. Let me pull up my stuff here.
And we do agree that, Isaiah 52, 50, 53, maybe even 49. There's lots of references here to the idea that this servant is suffering. It's redundant enough that we understand contextually that if we're talking about the Messiah, there's a component of suffering to be associated with the Messiah, right? Whether maybe you might want to take it hyperbolic, emotional, stuff like that, that's fine. I'll handle whatever argument you give me. I just kind of want to know.
Right, of course. And of course, you have to understand that the Messiah also is basically shares in the same suffering with his nation of Israel as well. So I'm going to pull up 42, the four servant songs, 42 verse 1 through 4. Behold, my servant, I will support him, my chosen one, my soul desires. I have placed my spirit in him. He shall promulgate justice to the nations. He shall neither cry, nor shall he raise his voice, and he shall not make his voice heard outside. A breaking reed he shall not break, and a flickering flaxen wick he shall not quench. With truth he shall execute justice. Neither shall he weaken, nor shall he be broken, until he establishes justice in the land, and for his instructions, islands shall long. 42, verse 1 to 4, 49, verse 1 to 6.
I will want to go. Are you, I would like to, I want you to do your thing, Neff, by the way, just go ahead and do your thing. But I'm going to be honest with you. I would like to keep moving.
Yeah, sure.
So like, and I do have one more other passage in Isaiah I wanted to go through. So, I mean, but by all means, like,
Sure.
I mean, again, just to try and draw it like into a, I'm not trying to condescend or put you on the spot or anything. Because again, dude, I super appreciate you being here and having this conversation. So I'm not trying to like put you on the spot or nothing.
Absolutely.
I'm just like, and it's fine. Like, if you could even say like, well, I'm still kind of working this part out, like exactly how this fits into my worldview. I'll accept that, because I mean, there's certainly a lot of things I'm still figuring out too. So it's not like, I don't want you to feel like you're so on the spot. You have to answer this if you're still kind of like, because again, I understand there's lots of textual critical arguments for it and against it. I get that. Again, I didn't want to have a paper fight. Like, I wanted to hear like your personal, justifications for your worldview on this. That's kind of what. So like, I mean, if you can pitch that to me essentially enough, awesome. But like, if it's kind of something you're not really comfortable doing specifically enough, I accept that too, and we can just move on.
Sure. So let's just actually look at, I guess, the idea of the servant songs from Isaiah 42 and so forth. Isaiah actually tells us exactly who the servant is in Isaiah chapter 49. Listen to this. Hearken, you islands, to me, and listen closely, you nations from afar. The Lord has called me from the womb. From the innards of my mother, he mentioned my name. And he made my mouth like a sharp sword. He concealed me in his shadow of his hand, and he made me into a polished arrow. He hid me in his quiver. And he said to me, you are my servant Israel, about whom I will boast. And I said, I toiled in vain. I consumed my strength for naught in vanity. Yet surely my right is with the Lord, and my deed is with my God. And now the Lord, who formed me from the womb as a servant to him, said, to bring back Jacob back to him, and Israel shall be gathered to him. And I will be honored in the eye of the Lord, and my God was my strength.
So you're saying the servant is all of Israel, is your interpretation?
Correct. Isaiah, it is.
Do you see the problem with that?
Hold on.
Okay. Well, do you see the problem with it, with what we just read, with what we just went through, with the servant being exalted, or like with the exact same type of word usage as was used to say that only the Lord would be exalted on that day? I mean, you're kind of, it feels a little bit wrong in terms of that type of interpretation to me. Like also too, let's focus on the idea that, and I think maybe you'll back me up on this. I didn't pull the exact references for this, but I mean, maybe you'll just concede. Like, there's instances where Israel can refer to an individual or a group.
Correct. Absolutely.
Right. So
we have to understand whether this is not like a specific person or this is corporate Israel, basically.
Right. So do you have an argument to one preference over the other?
Sure. So I definitely think that this is Israel as a whole, though, of course, the Messiah, of course, who is the king, shares within the sovereign.
Well, let me make it simpler. Where do you draw the line? Because I mean, here's the thing. If you say this passage helps me interpret all these other passages as meaning that the servant is Israel, this is basically your proof text. Okay, well then what you've done is you've taken all the passages of the servant and you've turned them into Israel. Now, if that's not your case and you're not doing that, that's okay. But then you have to tell me where you're drawing the line and why.
Right. So I suppose
because it doesn't fit with what we just went over. And it's going to fit even worse with what I have to go over next. So I don't know if you want to keep going with the point or we just want to maybe move on to the next one.
All right. Well, maybe.
Because here's the thing. I want to hear your worldview. I'm not lying. I'm sorry. I apologize. I do want to hear your perspective. I do want to hear your reconciliation, and I might be interrupting too much. I apologize.
Yeah, sure. So go ahead. I guess first and foremost, from a worldview, of course, I am Jewish. I am proud to be Jewish. Though I am agnostic about the existence of God, and I am agnostic atheist. Um, so I guess that's my overall worldview. However, I interpret Scripture the way that.
Are you expecting a
Jewish-
Messiah? Are you expecting a Messiah?
No,
Okay. So this to you is all just nonsense anyway.
I don't think it's nonsense, but it's more. I don't know if it would
Well,
be.
I
I
mean,
would.
it's weird to me because like you're using the Jews like defeater texts like for it, but at the same time you're not believing their statements about who the Messiah is and that it might be a viable claim. Like I'm a little confused by that.
Sure. So I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Well, okay. Well, like you'll go to the Jewish rabbis to like get defeaters to say, okay, Jesus isn't the Messiah. But then at the same time, you're kind of ignoring everything they have to say about the promise of a future Messiah. I mean, do you sense like I just it's a little for me it feels a little hypocritical, if you know what I mean. Like you're willing to go to them for evidence against what seems to be blatantly positive evidence. Because here's the thing, like you must understand, if you have no dog in this fight, then I can go ahead and open it up at this level. Why would you take their side? I mean, what would be the purpose? Like, they have a motivation. They have a confirmation bias. It's even all throughout history. Like, why? I mean, I get it too. I mean, I argue with the Jews, and I love the Jews. I love my brothers. But you know what? I don't understand what your motivator would be to take that side of the argument, considering the fact that it's blatant throughout history that they have confirmation bias. They have a desire to deny it. It's even part of prophecy. So like
Well, everyone
all of these tactics that they use to deny that, you've just kind of absorbed and said are more viable. I guess I'm just a little confused.
Right. I guess I think everyone has confirmation bias, and at the same time, I would argue that you look at these passages through the lens of Jesus and say, okay, your confirmation bias is that these passages are of Jesus.
Well, but I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not like they're so radically different from the text. I mean, you have to go through like pretty literalistic, gymnastics to try to make the points that you want to make. In many cases, even and especially the ones that are particularly vague on their surface, anyway, as to the type of prophecy or what it is that they're correlating all the time. And so, like I'm just saying, like you can take. I'm not even saying that one is necessarily a majority or a minority. But why would you feel so compelled to take the losing side of every single portion of every single argument from people who are admittedly and historically biased against the belief of a spiritual Messiah? I'm having an issue with this.
Yeah, well, for the most part, the Orthodox Jewish people, from where I take the majority of my arguments, do believe in God and do believe in the future Messiah.
Well, why don't you?
Well, because I don't believe in God. I really don't believe in
Okay,
prophecy.
well, and I don't want to make this debate about this, but I just, because my curiosity is piqued again, it's kind of back to that question. Like, I mean, you believe them enough to say that their scholarly interpretations of the Messiah are wrong, but you don't seem to believe them enough to believe that the scholarly interpretations of the Messiah are right. And I guess I'm just like, this does not help me reconcile this.
All right, sure. So I guess I should. I don't know where I should back up to. The problem
Well, I
that
mean,
I
don't
have.
go too far because I do want to get on to another passage. I don't know how much time
Yeah,
we
sure.
have. Appraise SFT. What is our clock here? I don't know what we're doing here.
Good question. I've got 10 minutes left on the clock. Is that
Okay? Yeah. I don't
want
want to spend tons of time on this, but go ahead, say what you got to say, and then I'd like to move on to Isaiah 9, and we can finish on that. But go ahead. Neff.
Okay,
We got
sure.
some good questions too from the audience. So take your time, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, about 10 minutes left. So
Okay.
Yeah, and Standing, if you don't mind, if we're still kind of enjoying the discussion, do you mind if we go just a tad bit longer? Maybe like
I'll
an
leave.
extra.
Yeah, I'll let you guys know when the 10 minutes is up. But like if you guys are tired, I know I've been in enough debates to know that there's a limit where you start getting tired. So at 10 minutes, I'll let you guys know, and then I'll leave it up to you guys if you want to get right into the Q&A.
Yeah,
Or
I mean, I certainly want to be able to do honor to the audience for sending in questions and stuff. So, I mean, I'll try to pitch it out as long as I can.
No
sure.
problem, guys. Hey, we're loving the discussion. The audience is loving it. It's been very engaging. So go ahead. If you need a little bit more time than 10 minutes, let me know. Go ahead, guys.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, sure. So I guess my biggest problem is this: claims require evidence, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and ultimately that which cannot be excuse me, what can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. And this is a problem that I have with miracles and stuff like that. And even going back to the virgin birth that we already talked about, even if I concede the point that Jesus was born of a virgin, excuse me, that the passage is talking about a future virgin birth, why should I believe that Jesus fulfilled it? Why should I believe that Jesus was actually born of a virgin? So I guess that is more of the
Beautiful.
fundamental.
I appreciate that. And you know what?
Does that make sense? Does that,
Yeah,
do
you know what, Neff, it makes perfect sense. And I think it's at the core of this whole thing. And you know,
right.
this is one of those things that I kind of argue with atheists like on and on. And like again, you know, this isn't an atheism Christian debate anyway. So like I
Right.
don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but like I get where you're coming from. Here's my issue with it is that
Right.
there's automatic confirmation bias verified by your statement. And I'll explain why real quick. But by your kind of own admission, you've basically presupposed naturalism. Like as to say, because miracles are not naturalistically possible, any other explanation. And same thing for the prophecies. And see, I think I figured it out. This is why you're willing to take the outer edge probabilities against the evidence, is because even those outer edge probabilities are more viable than a supernatural explanation in your worldview. And see,
In a way, I would just stop you right there. I think that is correct right there. Because I like what Bart Ehrman says. Miracles, by definition, are the least probable occurrence, and therefore the least probable to believe. For example, there have been thousands of people throughout history, even in the time frame of Jesus, who all claim to be able to do miracles. Why should I believe Jesus's claims over all the others?
well, and that's exactly it. Miracles in terms of corroboration and validation, in terms of a biographical, historical genre work, are very rare, very few and far between. You don't have any type of examples that you could possibly point to in an ancient biographical context that would compare in such a way. And by the way, let me just tell you something, Neff. If miracles were so easy to fabricate, wouldn't you think the Muslims would have done it by now? I mean, they've had 1,400 years of defunct literature that's been changed and rewritten time and time again under dozens of caliphs. And now that we find out recently that they've got hundreds of different Qurans, and not once amongst any of them did they think to throw in a fabricated miracle to try to validate their defunct prophet. But they didn't, because they couldn't. And you know why you can't? Because it doesn't fit the sociological history of the nature of reality. And here's your issue, Neff. Here's your core issue.
Can I answer that? Can I answer that real quick?
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. I know one of the miracles that Muhammad claimed to be able to fulfill, or what they claim, is that he split the moon in half.
That's not his miracle. Yeah, no, please don't do that to me. It's not his miracle. It was a claim that Allah did it, and it's defeated in the very verse of the claim, which says that judgment day is upon you. So clearly the verse itself defeated itself.
But let's just
and
say,
it wasn't his miracle. He didn't go up and say moon split, or hold up his hands or do some sort of display. It wasn't his miracle. It was something he observed. So it's not even a miracle, not even by a classical sense. So there is no miracle.
Of course. No, of course.
Let's not play that game. I know a lot about Islam, and I don't want to. I mean, I'll debate any Muslim any freaking time of the day of the week, but I'm not here to debate Islam.
Islam is about as bad as Mormonism in terms of ridiculousness and
Agreed. I call Joseph Smith the American Muhammad. Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. Mormonism is wacko. That's for sure.
It's beyond wacko, but so is Islam. So, and that's not the point. But anyway, maybe we could move on. I think we only have like 4 or 5 minutes left. Maybe we could kind of finish up. There was one point I wanted to make. Let's do this. There was one point I kind of wanted to make out of Isaiah 9. And I just kind of want to give it to you, and then take your response, and then maybe we can move to Q&A. How does that sound?
That sounds perfect. So yeah, I know the passage in Isaiah chapter 9 very well.
Okay, 9, 6 through 7, right? I'm sure you know exactly.
9, 6 through 9, 5 through 6 in the Jewish scriptures that numbered a little bit differently, but same verse. For a child shall be born to us, a son given to us, and the authority is upon his shoulder. And the wondrous advisor, the mighty God, the everlasting Father, shall call his name the Prince of Peace. To him who increases the authority and for peace without end on David's throne and on his kingdom, to establish it and to support it with justice and with righteousness from now to eternity. The zeal of the Lord of hosts shall accomplish this.
Okay.
Sure. So let's actually look at the actual context.
Well, yeah, no, that's fine. The context we can do, and I want you to do that. Save that for your response, because there's an important point for me to make real quick about this, and I do want to hear what you have to say. But just let me follow through. So we read that verse. Now, there's something important that kind of stands out to me, and again, I like to notice some of these thematic consistencies, because these are the types of things that defy fabrication, the types of things that you wouldn't expect even fabricators to think about this type of nuance and minutia in some of these type of thematic consistencies. So what we have here, we have a child. Would you agree? Would you at least agree with me that Isaiah 9 is talking about this servant, whoever this is, the Messiah?
And it's not a messianic prophecy. I disagree.
Oh, you disagree? Okay, well then okay. Well, let me give my point then, and then you can give your pitch of why you disagree. So,
sure.
Okay. So I, of course, see it as, and of course, naturally, I could see why people would want to deny it, because here we have a talk about the child is born. From our perspective, of course, this is talking about the Messiah, and he's even given the title of Mighty God. Now, and I know there is some debate, even in the Jewish community, amongst whether this does or does not refer to the same suffering servant or the Messiah. Now, clearly, Neff may have been taken one of those positions as he has a preference to. That's fine. I'm happy to hear his debate. But let me make my point real quick. The amazing point about this verse is that Isaiah, in multiple instances throughout the rest of his book, actually uses these titles that are given to the Messiah to actually refer to God himself. So let me give you some examples. Isaiah 10, 20 through 21. In that day, the remnant of Israel, the survivors of the house of Jacob, will no longer rely on him who struck them down, but will truly rely on the Lord, the Holy One of Israel. A remnant will return, a remnant of Jacob will return to the mighty God. One of the terms used in that verse. That was one of the titles. Next one is in Isaiah 25:1, where it says, "Wonderful things, your counsels of old are faithless, and faithfulness and true. I will praise your name for all you have done, wonderful things, your counsels." So that word's everlasting, Father. There will be no name. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 sec. You reign on David's throne forever, establishing, upholding with righteousness from time on forever. Okay, Isaiah 28:29, wonderful in counsel. Isaiah 57:15, he who inhabits eternity, there's an eternality to him. Isaiah 63:16, our Father, which is also a reference to that name of that servant. And then, of course, Daniel 8, I think, let's see, hold on. Daniel 8:11 through 25 backtracks to the Prince of the Host. So I'm just curious how you like interpret that, with the idea that there seems to be that type of correlation between Isaiah of these titles that are given to God and the entities or aspects or natures of the character that are also shared between God and this claim of the Messiah.
Sure. So this is, of course, I'm sure you know the Jewish interpretation that this is Hezekiah. And the reason why, one of the biggest clues for this is the phrase, the zeal of the Lord of hosts shall accomplish this. For every victory shall with clamor and garments and wallow in blood. But this shall be burnt, consumed by fire, for a child has been born to us, and all. And from now to eternity, the zeal of the Lord of hosts shall accomplish this. One of the ways we interpret scripture is, okay, we see a phrase here, and this is kind of more of a rare phrase that we see in only a handful of places. We can see that they are somehow connected. And the zeal of the Lord of hosts is a phrase that appears only 3 times. One is right there, and the other 2 times is describing the defeat of Hezekiah, the defeat of the Assyrian army by Hezekiah. In 2 Chronicles 23, Isaiah, I am off to that. 2 Chronicles 32:23. Many brought offerings to Jerusalem for the Lord and valuable gifts for Hezekiah, king of Judah, and hold on. I am in the wrong spot. I am in the wrong spot.
It's okay. Take your time
Okay.
too. Like some of my
Yeah,
notes, I rushed through them sort towards some of my notes at the end too because
yeah, I
again,
kind of brought
long
through
hot day and
what my
stuff.
notes.
Dude, I get it. Seriously, it's no big deal.
Yeah, sure. So
Is it okay? Let's just so I'm kind of on the same page. Is it the idea? Who is the child? Maybe just help me with that. Who is the? Because you said it's not messianic. So you're saying it's Hezekiah? Is that what you're saying?
correct.
Okay,
That is the typical Jewish interpretation.
okay, and you're claiming it's Hezekiah because. And what is the support for? Give me the support argument for that. I guess.
Well, I guess the first clue is, as I already said, the zeal of the Lord of Hosts. That phrase only appearing 3 times. 2 other times refers to the miraculous defeat of the Assyrian army.
Which is the zeal of the Lord of hosts? Where is you're talking about that last part of the verse? The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. This is what you're saying, and you're saying that
Correct.
Hezekiah has that title.
Well,
I mean, what is the? I'm sorry, I must be missing the argument. I'm sorry. Help me here.
Sure. Let me just pull up and. Do.
Oh, David, before you speak again, I'm going to jump in real quick. And maybe
Sure.
when you guys are done with that last point, I want to give you both just a minute or so just to kind of wrap up your
Cool.
thoughts.
Yeah, appreciate
Yeah,
that.
sure.
Yeah.
Like, if you feel like there's something you didn't address, you just want to make a short concluding statement, we can do that. A great job to the both of you. Very good debate. And then we got some solid questions we will run right through. I know you guys must be tired. So, yeah, thanks again.
I'm burned out, bro. I'm taking a Sabbath.
Yeah, I'm just kind of burned out from a very long work week as well. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good place to end. Before we do end, I'm just kind of curious about your take on my argumentation, such as the one that I brought up about the issue of Exodus 12 and Psalm 69 being cited as fulfillment of prophecy. I'm just kind of curious because this is definitely something that I definitely want to talk to you about.
Sure.
Are-
Let me pull them up real quick because I want to make sure actually. Let's try and give each other a little bit of time because especially if you wanted to kind of address it with a little bit more detail, that's fine. So let me pull it up. Give me 2 seconds. Okay. I'm sorry. What is it? I'm sorry. 1 second. No, I'm not there yet. Hold on.
Yeah, I guess the first one was Psalm 69, verse 4 to 5. It's cited in the Gospel of John to
All right,
fulfill what was
John.
written.
What is the site reference in John?
John 15:25. It was to fulfill the word that is written in their law. They hated me without a cause. But of course, the very next verse says, "Oh God, you know my folly, the wrongs I have done are not hidden from you."
Hold on 1 sec. I need to. Gosh, this thing is not working with me today. John 15. I'm sorry. One more time. John 15.
25.
25. All right, but this is to fulfill what is written in their law. They hated me without reason. Okay, and give me 2 seconds. You're saying that's reference to Psalm 35?
69.
Psalm 69.
Yeah. Verse 4 to 5.
Okay, all right, I'll play that. Hold on 1 sec. Psalm 69, 4 and 5. Sorry, man. I'm tired. Just bear with
Oh,
me.
oh, I totally understand. I am
You
exhausted
guys have
myself.
both earned a vacation.
Right. Just bear
Yes,
with me. I'm sorry.
we all need a vacation.
Psalm 69:4. Okay. Okay. Hate me without a cause. Okay, hold on here. I'll just pull it up in whatever. All right. I have more in number than the hairs of my head are those who hate me without cause. Mighty are those who would destroy me, those who attack me with lies. What I did not steal, must I now restore? O God, you know my folly. The wrongs I have done are not hidden from you. Okay.
Correct. So what are the wrongs that Jesus did? What are
Oh,
his
yeah, so you're
problems?
trying to
So
say that
so
that's
that's my so,
okay,
so I guess my argument is
okay,
that
got it. All right,
the
yeah.
verse.
Here's the thing. Here's the issue, bro. Is that we can't take that level of specificity out of the text, and I'm going to give you another example to show you why. Like it, especially, dude. I mean, you must know at least from textual criticism and historical, looking into the literature that like prophecies and certainly how the Jews interpreted them were layered. And certainly
Right.
like you'd have, and this is the thing, like in terms of like how we interpret like Jesus's prophecies. Like, okay, this is just an example. I'm not trying to like take it to this, but this is just an example. So like you remember, like there's lots of atheistic claims that Jesus, when he's describing basically the end of the world when he comes back, or he's describing the end of the age or whatever it is, he's saying these things that like have not come to pass yet. So Jesus failed in his prophecy, and this is
Right.
kind of what's said. So
Right.
like
And I would actually agree with that
okay.
interpretation. I would agree with that argumentation.
Okay, here's the issue though, from our perspective, from our side of looking at it that way, is that the idea is that Jewish prophecies are layered like that. And when Jesus was asked to basically delineate the descriptors that he give, it was important. I think it was Luke 4.
Yeah.
I forget. I think that was Luke 4. But he was asked, he was said, what is the sign of your coming? And what is the sign of the end of the age? And see, here's the issue. From the Jewish perspective, from the perspective you're taking, you conflate those two. But what
Okay.
Jesus was really doing was answering one and the other at different times, actually giving a layered response. And see, that's how we've always looked at it. That's how the Christians always looked at it. That's how the disciples and the apostles looked at it, is that Jesus's words were in partiality for his actual time, the end of the age of his age on earth, or the fulfillment of his kingdom, the coming of his kingdom, which would be his ascension. And then there's the rest, which is talking about future events, which would be his coming, his return, which is why there's a differentiation between the two. Your interpreters conflate them and say they're the same thing when to us they're not. Now, to take it to your Psalm 69, 4 and 5, what you're doing is you're taking a prayer, a contextual prayer from David, and trying to carry it through with extra specificity. See, the only part of the verse that's referenced is those who hate me without cause. And you know what? That pops up somewhere else too. It pops up in Psalm 35:19. Okay,
Right.
that with this idea that there's a hatred without a cause. So clearly, when it's saying, when it is written of me, and it's drawing specifically to that thing that's written about me, it's talking about that specific thing because it's written in two different verses. But you're
Okay.
saying, let's follow it all the way down, and oh my gosh, Jesus is guilty of iniquity. Okay, well, let me show you why you can't take that argument and why no Christian ever could if you're trying to take the consistency of the text appropriately. And it would be Psalms 7, verse 8. Now, if you look at Psalm 7, verse 8, you'll see that it's a prayer of David that basically flies in the face of Christian doctrine, which if you were a Christian, it would not be recommended for you to pray this prayer, because you
Which
have
one is it?
David who's basically asking for God to judge him based upon his own righteousness. Okay.
Right. Dedicate me, O God, to my righteousness according to my integrity, O Most High.
Right. So he's saying, judge me by my integrity, but we know based upon Christian doctrine later on that all of our good works are as filthy rags. And what we also know
Right.
from the historical context of the Psalms, which surrounds it, which are the records in First and Second Kings, that when David did come time to be judged because of his fornication and failures, God did not regard his righteousness when he judged him. He judged him
Correct.
appropriately and rightly. And you know what's interesting? When you continue to read the Psalms and you continue to go through them, you see less and less talk about David's righteousness, about David's greatness, and lots more talk about how great and righteous God is. His tone and his perspective changes, and we get to understand that and take it from the scripture as his development as a man of God. And we would miss that beautiful hyperbolic nuance by taking the type of strict, rigid type of interpretation that you might force on it. And that's what I would say in terms of my perspective.
Okay, sure. So you think it's just hyperbole, that it's just, but you would have to agree that from the perspective of the writer, that the writer of these Psalms had no intention of prophesying about Jesus or any future person, correct?
I don't think he necessarily knew. I mean, I don't think he was necessarily like because here's the thing. I don't think God has to reveal full knowledge to everyone to give a revelation. Like okay. So like there's a part of the Bible maybe you're familiar with where they claim like Jesus lied. Like he said to the disciples, I'm not going to go down to the feast. And then later on he went down to the feast, right? Like you've heard that
Yeah, I'm
before, right?
familiar with that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't buy that argument. For the record, I do not. I'm
Okay, but
sensitive.
okay. Well, you would probably understand my defeater to it too. That omission of truth is not lying. Omission of full truth is not lying. So I don't expect all of the gospel writers, all of the prophets, to have been given some sort of absolutist complete knowledge. I believe they were given the knowledge they needed for what they were accomplishing, for what was being carried forward. Now, the fact that you have the reference that you were drawing to here in John, to say this was spoken of in the Psalms. Okay, it's spoken of in two different Psalms in one very, very specific line. And that's saying this is what was written about the Messiah. And you're saying, well, let's take it in its entirety in the full thing, not just the portion that may have been written about the Messiah that's clearly referenced in two different Psalms, but let's stretch it out and try to take it to the outer edges. And we don't associate that type of cross-referencing that way. And certainly we wouldn't for the sake of the interpretation, or for the sake of the prophecy. And by the way, the Jews didn't do it that way either. They didn't, as I'm sure I know too, that the chapters and verses are a modern convention. Okay. What they
Right.
had back then was lines of text. Okay. And the idea was you're going to see this statement somewhere way back there in this book. And when you see this, I'm talking about what I'm dealing with right now, that people are going to hate me. And that there was a line, there was a piece of prophecy that came through David that was inspired through him that mentioned that this would happen. And the apostles saw it and noticed it and realized it. And by the way, if you want to go ahead and stretch it to an existential interpretation, what I could also say is that Christ bore the iniquity of the world. And in the essence of that prayer summarizes basically his feeling at the end of his sacrifice on the cross, having taken on the weight of the sin of the world upon his back, saying, "Oh God, you know my folly. The wrongs I have done are not hidden from you." Christ was perfect. Christ, by the context of the passage, was absolutely perfect and sinless. But the only time we know from the context of the narrative that he took on sins was to take on the sins of the world. But even if you want to look at this existentially and say, "Oh God, you know my folly," Christ had none, so he knows he had none. The wrongs I have done are not hidden from you. He hadn't done any wrongs, so nothing was hidden from him. This is more of a validation from our personal theological perspective than it is from the type of rigid, literary, strict, type of thing that you want to try to maybe force to it. And I'm not saying it's not completely valid, but at the same time, there's ways for you to take it that might not be consistent with understanding what the writers themselves were trying to correlate. Because what you have to say, Neff, and this is what I maybe need to just draw the final point on here, is that you're basically saying the apostle writers drew reference to this verse in Psalm 69 and then made themselves a contradiction with the claim of the perfect sinless Christ by drawing reference to this and not only reading a few verses down. And yet these are also the people that fabricated this elaborate, hoax throughout all of history, but they didn't read 5 lines down to make sure they weren't contradicting with their reference. When they had hundreds of other prophecies to rely upon, why not leave this one out if the defeater is supposedly just 5 lines down? See, like at some point, some of this stuff doesn't even make sense to me. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think this is a pretty good time to get to
Sure.
the
Yeah, and
Q&A.
I apologize for if I monopolized at all. Again, Neff, if I didn't say it enough, I super appreciate you doing this.
Oh, and I appreciate you being here as well, and we definitely should do another debate sometime soon.
I would love to. No, and I would love to. And you're very
but I definitely,
respectful, and you're fun to debate, and you certainly have a lot of knowledge on a lot of these topics. So I appreciate you and thank you for this.
yeah, definitely. So, Sandy, are you ready with the questions?
Yes. Let me pull them up here. We got a lot of good questions from our faithful listeners. Guys, thanks for making the live chat so fun. Thanks for making the debate fun, guys. You, like I said earlier, you've earned yourselves some vacation. So let's get right into it. So okay, Coco Puffer. I already read that one at the beginning. Okay, super chat from Chris Keith. Thanks so much there, Chris. He says, Mike Winger has some excellent videos on the suffering servant passages on his channel. So clearly about Jesus. Highly recommend, he says, his Typology Series 2. I guess more of a statement. You guys can respond to that if you'd like to.
I have never heard of him, but I definitely would like to check him out. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm familiar. Yeah, and I'm familiar with Mike. It's Bible Thinker, I think, is the name of his site or something. And yeah, he's got a channel, and yeah, he's got good stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, let's move right on to Jungle Jargon. Good to see ya. $10 super chat. Thanks so much, JJ. He says, there is no savior besides God. Only your maker can perfectly cover for you himself and remake you again from the inside out by the power of his true word as no one else can. Do you agree, David? So kind of a question for you, David. Go ahead, brother.
Obviously not.
By the way, can I just add that this is a real different thing because I'm used to getting tons of like hate questions because I'm always on modern day debate. So like this is a pleasant little change. I will admit that.
Yeah, it's definitely, even when I debate on my own channel, it's always anytime an atheist comes on, David. So thanks for being a good sport. It's typically most of the questions are coming at you, David, versus Smokey and I that are used to all the questions coming at us. So Alec Cox, $35 super chat. He's really putting my kids through college. Alec, thanks so much, brother. We appreciate it. Let's see. He says, "Ooh, Smokey, you got a fan." He says, "Smokey has got this. Jesus Christ was also predicted in Daniel 9 down to the very day of his entrance into Jerusalem." David, if you want to comment on that.
All right, boy. So that'll take probably a good half hour to really dissect.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm actually working on a video series right now on repeating the prophecies of Jesus. So this debate was actually a really good way to get into some of the possible counter arguments that I might need to address. So I'm definitely going to be doing a video on Daniel chapter 9 and some of the overall textual issues with the book of Daniel itself, which I'm sure you've heard. I'm sure you've heard the arguments about the issues with his historicity and stuff like that.
I hear that there's a lot of claims about doubts of the historicity just because it's so stinking specific. They have a hard time believing it could have been written back then. I don't know. Like, and again, it's back to that thing of maybe we could even have a whole debate on that whole sufficiency of evidence type thing, you know,
Right.
for actual like what is viable to critique historical literature by, you know, but
Right.
that to me might possibly be stretching like the outer
Yeah.
edge for me.
Because there, of course, the problem that I brought up earlier. Even if I concede Isaiah chapter number 7:14 is a virgin, why should I even believe that Jesus was born of a virgin to begin with? And of course, there's that whole debate right then and there.
Well, and the idea was that well, to me, the sign was clear to me that it was supposed to be pointed out there was something supernatural about this birth or conception, even left in its vague form, and that the idea of Betula, Alma, all that stuff, it's all irrelevant. Like actually, even Esther was referred to all three in the book of Esther. Like the whole idea is you never use Betula unless you're trying to draw a correlation specifically of a legal marriage context. And the marriage ability, the marriage of factor of her was not part of the prophecy. It was just her being of a marriageable age, which is why Alma was used. So to me, like I don't require the type of specificity that maybe the Jews might be requiring on the text, because if I took it that way, then it's basically just saying, yep, some chick's going to get pregnant and that's a sign to you. And like, I just, you know what, that's just so dumb. Like, you know, I mean, I have to look at it with at least a sense of practicality, and that's not practical to me. It's just desperate.
Right. It has fair. And again, that's definitely going to be addressed in my video series that I'm working
Okay.
on.
And just a quick note on the Daniel 9 thing, just like, and because I could concede a certain point in the idea that maybe not like the specific day, because again, I might be betraying my expectation on some of the specificity with that. I do believe this, that it was for their calendar, for their time and their recognition, I believe it was predicted, but I do believe that the entirety of most of ancient cultures didn't have this type of specificity of date tracking that we enjoy today, or timekeeping that we enjoy today. So when we're looking back in time and we're, you know, making all these assumptions and calibrations to try to draw conclusions, we need to be very, very confident that our arguments are sound. So like I don't want, like I would be interested to see what you would have to say in terms of your justifications for Daniel 9. I think it would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll definitely send you a link when I make that video.
Okay, guys, let's move right on to the next one. We've got a super chat from Coco Puffer, one of our #1 fans. Thanks so much, Coco. His question looks like it's for you again, David. So you're working overtime tonight. He says, David,
I'm trying to help out. Take a little
you guys are
pressure
keeping
off.
it good, and keep it up. You know, you guys are allowed to have a little back and forth for each one, of course. So
You're better
because a
than
lot of
James.
these are just statements.
You're better than James SFT.
Impossible. One could only dream. James, if you're still there, we love you.
Yeah, we love you, James. I'm just messing with you.
Okay, so Coco Puffer, David, NSRV is a dumpster fire. That's most of your problem.
Of course, I would disagree. I think the NRSV is one of the best Bibles on the market. The NRSV, from a non-Jewish publication, NRSV and the NET are probably the two best on the market today, especially the NET Full Notes Edition.
Well, what is your justification for that, just out of curiosity?
Well, I think that it has the most academic support behind it, and I like the way that I know a tiny bit of Hebrew, and from what I know and from what I can read, I think the NRSV and the NET do the best job in rendering the Hebrew from the little bit that I know.
Well, and do you see that? And I'm sorry, I don't mean to turn it the whole thing real quick, but like do you see that? Like, I mean, and just from let me just share my perspective on that real quick. Like
Yeah.
in terms of interpreting like the ancient literature from the Jews, for sure, there's some things that absolutely on a cultural context can get lost in translation, like things that don't necessarily always carry forward, and that's why many times we have different interpretations, because some of them are more about carrying like literalistic, like rigid literalistic type of interpretation, and others more are about doing more scholarly research and pulling out the meaning. So so like I do like to cross-reference different versions, and I also like to use an interlinear because I like to try to get myself familiar with some of those too.
And this isn't me trashing other translations. I read from the NASB and other
So
translations.
would you ever, but I guess let me ask you this just real quick. Would you ever use like in a practical like debate format, would you use anything other than the NRSV, or are you kind of like married to that?
I would be open to any translation that is
That's fine.
not like, unless it's like the Message or the NIV or anything like that. I do not like the NIV at all. I don't think it's
I don't really like the NIV. I'm kind of torn between NKJV, the New King James, and the ESV. I kind of switch between the two. So I mean, those are my most comfortable ones, and I feel like between the two, I get a nice marriage of kind of meetings and literalism. And if I'm confused, I can always pull up interlinear. So
one thing that I like about the NKJV is that it preserves the beauty of the KJV while making it more readable to the
Well, it also keeps, I think, to me, the spirit and honor of the original text in terms of its almost literalistic meaning carry forward. So like it gives that other side of the perspective of the text sometimes, that like something that's more meaning heavy, like the ESV would complement for. So like I like to be able to get that type of perspective from both sides. So yeah, I get it, absolutely.
Right. And of course, I think sometimes the NASB, I think, can sometimes be a bit too literal.
That one I hate. No, that one I probably hate that. Actually, I probably hate that one the most likely, actually.
Yeah.
Have you guys read the SUV?
Is it by what is it, Tesla? Are they releasing that now? Is that the new translation?
I guess they're all building them now.
I guess so.
Okay, good back and forth, guys. You're keeping this fun. So question for David again. You're famous. Jesus paid it all. Question for David. He says, Revelation predicted a mark required by every person in order to buy or sell. And we see this happening today. Is this a coincidence? Go ahead, David.
That is not what Revelation predicts at all. And that's something that I might be working on down the road. But that's not what any serious historical scholar would predict. And there is no evidence that we're going to be required to wear a mark or anything like that in order to buy or sell anything. So that's my response to that.
So like, just real quick, I'm so sorry.
Oh no, of course, go ahead.
I keep it going longer. I apologize.
No, this is fun. Keep it going, guys.
So like the idea that like it doesn't resound to you at all in terms of the perspective of the Jews, that like to us, like not only do we recognize that they were expecting the wrong type of Messiah, and Jesus was even talking to them about that, but they continue to do the same thing today, and that it fits our worldview that they're going to accept this, political liberator, and that we recognize that as the false Messiah. Like, does that ring to you at all? Like, I mean, that there's kind of that type of consistency in our worldview that tracked them, or you just kind of see it as fabricated?
I do kind of find it interesting that what you guys would say is the Antichrist is God, we would say is the Messiah. That is definitely an interesting observation to make.
But like, I mean, and not just the observation, but the consistency of the observation. Like the fact that it flowed not only to the ancient times for the reason that Jesus was rejected, but also flows forward into present times, showing that, I mean, there's viable reason to believe that was the case at the time. You see what I'm saying?
Right. So, of course, when you actually read the verses about the political reader that I cited in my debates, it's very, very clear that this is not the Antichrist, that this is a very righteous man. Just out of curiosity, do you believe that there will be a third temple being rebuilt? Because the entire rest of Ezekiel is pretty much dedicated to that.
I'm a little torn on that topic, to be completely honest with you. In terms of what the temple could manifest itself as, I think is one of those things that's still kind of up to debate. And because here's the thing, like the idea that it somehow has to be exactly what people are expecting it to, I think might be a little bit of a literalistic stretch, because I mean, it could very well be whatever is built to function as kind of the central religious order of the world. That the idea is that
Right.
this is going to be established under the Messiah, and there's going to
Right.
have to be a requirement of allegiance, to that, and that's part of the claim of what the Messiah. You see, and here's the issue with saying like, oh well, clearly the Messiah that's predicted is a righteous man, not the Antichrist. Well, this is the
Yeah.
whole problem, is because we believe that those verses talking about the righteous man have already been fulfilled. And the ones that we have, like in Daniel, like the son of perdition, the one who's going to come and commit the abomination of desolation, the
Yeah.
Antichrist, like that one, that's the one that we believe is the imposter that's supposed to come and fulfill those types of things that are predicted. So you're just saying, well, all the things that are predicted of the Messiah to come are a righteous man. Yeah,
Okay.
the
So
Messiah
let's
is
go back.
righteous. But there's
Yeah.
another who's coming, who's claiming to be the Messiah, who's not righteous.
Yeah. But of course, here's the problem that I have with this is when you read the text, this is coming after the 70 weeks is already fulfilled. So
Right.
is this so? Obviously,
Do you
if you want,
anticipate that prophecy also has to be fulfilled before the destruction of the temple?
um, well, a Jewish person, we would look at it and say that this would, from a strictly Orthodox Jewish perspective, that this was already fulfilled at the when the Romans when they destroyed the temple. So all of this is
Right.
already. But of course,
Well,
that's a
but
whole different.
no. My question was, do you think it's practical to take from the text that the delivery of the Messiah should have been expected to happen before the destruction of the temple?
I do not know. Honestly, I need to
Okay.
research that a little bit. From
Okay,
what
well,
I understand,
we're not going to make a whole debate
but
about
that's
that right now. Okay, that's fine. No, if you don't know, you don't know. It's fine. No, no. I mean,
yeah.
I would claim there is, but that's fine. That's something for a later time. I'm sorry. Let's move on.
Well,
Okay.
actually, that was a good back and forth, and it's also related to the next question we have from Alec Cox. Thanks for your question. He says, can you ask David Neff what he will think when the third temple is built? The negotiations are going on right now, and the red heifers line is ready to go for the sacrifice for the temple. I think I read that correctly. What are
Yeah,
your thoughts, David?
I'm highly skeptical of that. But if there is a third temple that's rebuilt, that'll definitely be more of a believer in Orthodox Judaism. I guess
Well,
that's an event that'll turn me more towards the Orthodoxy. Whether it will be rebuilt, whether there's a red heifer, I'm not sure. I really have not studied that eschatology. They've been saying that for decades now, and so again, I'm highly skeptical.
I think they've already started doing sacrifices, and I think I saw uh special about that not too long ago, that like they actually already have an altar and they're starting to do sacrifices. They're trying to bring back in the sacrificial system. And like I guess the idea is that, like, in order for, to me, in my mind, in order for a political leader to be able to take the position that is painted of both, I would say, the way the Jews are anticipating the Messiah to be and the way that we see the Antichrist to be, they're
Right.
expecting someone to be able to make the temple be able to be built, because like the whole idea is that all this area is kind of under contention, right? And
Right.
so, like, if someone could somehow, like, I don't know, marry the issues between the two and bring peace, then that would allow the temple to be built. And see, to me, that's a viable expectation of a possible fulfillment of
Right.
prophecy in my mind. Yeah.
Sure. So I guess I should. I guess. I guess from when I was more of an Orthodox Jewish person, this is how I would interpret the events. And let's just start from there. The first event, of course, is that he will be heralded by Elijah the prophet. So from what I understand, from what I believe when I was more in line with the Orthodox Judaism, is that Elijah himself will come and make himself known, and then the world will immediately turn to Elijah and turn back to God. From there, the Messiah will be raised up, and then they will rebuild the temple. That's my perspective, at least. Does that make sense?
One more time. I'm sorry. I don't know if I.
That Elijah, that the Messiah will be preceded by Elijah the prophet. So, from what I understand, that Elijah will actually come back and I guess somehow make himself known, And from there, the world will turn to Elijah and back to God, and then the Messiah will be revealed. That's how I understand it, at least.
Okay. And what is the reference for that, real quick? I'm sorry.
The end of Savior.
Oh, you're just going from like interpretive history type of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I understand. Okay, I understand. All right, that's fine.
Okay, gentlemen, let's go on to the next one. So, surprise, surprise, question for David. Let's see. My question to David is, how do you understand Psalms 2:7? We might have to pull that up. I don't know.
I'll get it. I'll get it here.
I got it.
David. No, Neff's pretty quick on David. Neff's pretty quick on pulling those up. I think he's got it.
7 to 12. That's something that I'll probably definitely be working on in the video series, because that is just way too long to really go through. I will proclaim the Lord's decree. You are my son, and all that.
Okay, yeah, let's next question, David. What do you think about the entire book of Psalms? Let's go through it right now.
Sure. All Psalm sure. So my belief, I think the book of Psalms is a very beautiful
Oh, no,
book.
I was just kidding. That wasn't a real question.
Okay.
Okay, so you know what? Let's I lost my place. No, here we go. Chris Keith. Question for David. The debate over two messiahs before the time of Jesus is direct evidence ancient rabbis thought suffering servant was Messiah. Ask David thoughts on that. Go ahead, guys.
Sure, so that's incorrect. So there is basically an idea of two different messiahs, Mashiach ben Yosef and the Mashiach ben David. The Mashiach, and it's been a very long time since I studied that, is the Mashiach ben Yosef, the person, it's been a very long time since I studied it. But the Mashiach ben Yosef is not the same person as Mashiach ben David. Very long time since I've actually studied it.
Yeah, I think it's been a while since I looked at that one too, and I think it was the idea of like two potential anointed ones or something like that. But there's an issue with the Jewish take on it in terms of it would end up making one of them hundreds of years old or something like that. So I mean, there might be the idea of some sort of, I guess, two anointed ones. It's been a while since I looked into it myself.
But of course, why would that be a problem? I mean.
Well, it's not that it's a problem. It's just it's trying to understand exactly how it's fitting into the Messianic prophecy. Because like for us, like as an example, like from our perspective of the delivery of the Messiah, like it wasn't just the Messiah. There was someone that went before the Messiah, and who went before the Messiah? John the Baptist. And John the Baptist was thought of as a prophet like Elijah. In fact, he was even claimed by this by a lot of people. So they said, you know, like, well, who are you? Are you the Messiah? They're having these types of conversations. John is out there in the wilderness, you know, basically proclaiming the Messiah is on his way, person who I'm not even fit to unloose his sandals. And he's baptizing people saying, you know, repent, you know, and then Jesus shows up. And then there you have the deliverance of the Messiah. So to me, it's a pretty clear, easy allegory for a relationship between someone who had come, you know, preparing the way, and Jesus Christ himself, the Messiah. That's how I see it.
Right.
Okay, gentlemen. Well, like I said before, great debate, great discussion, lots of great questions and super chats from our faithful audience. Thanks so much, guys. It was a good turnout today. We got through all the questions, so you guys get to finally retire for the night and get some sleep. But before we do that, if you guys got some final words, you want to plug in your channels, whatever you want to do, thanks so much for being here, though, giving us your time.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, man. Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate it. It was a great time. I really enjoyed it. Got to really talk about, and here's the thing too, is I like to talk about like big picture type stuff too. Like, you know, it's easy enough to say like I have an argument or I have a reason, but what's your justification for accepting those reasons sometimes? And maybe sometimes that's worth exploring, because we are victims of confirmation bias, deceiving ourselves, accepting terrible arguments just because we want to. So these debates are really good. These conversations are really good, not just to sharpen each other, maybe let us know whether or not we have good reasons for what we believe, but also expose it to the audience, you know, and let them kind of see, you know, the better sides of the arguments and make up their own mind. So I really do appreciate appreciate atheists and anyone, any open thinkers that are willing to come on and express ideas like this. It was very respectful of you, Neff. I hope you enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Oh, so did
Everyone,
I.
please, everyone, please feel free to come by my channel. I do open mics all the time. We talk about fun topics. We have interesting guests and stuff. So yeah, swing by.
Yeah, sure. So once again, thank you so much, Standing for Truth, for having me on your channel. I think this is probably one of my favorite debates that I've done so far. Smokey, you've been a great opponent. Definitely brought some things that, some interesting perspectives that have not been yet familiar with. I've always been, I guess I grew up in the fundamentalist Baptist church where everything was black and white. Everything was very precise and or not. So I'm sure you're familiar with that. Some of those issues.
Oh yeah, and I'm not very fundamentalist myself, clearly. So but it's because I've taken a very different dynamic type of perspective of my reality and who God is. After years of study, so these things take a little bit of a different shape to me after this time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have some debates coming up with Mr. Kent Hovind. One rudimentary dating and the geological column, as I mentioned earlier in my opening. So yeah, thank you so much for having me back on.
Awesome. Well, very good words from the both of you. Very intelligent closing statements there. So thanks again. I'll make sure that your channels are listed in the description box. Please check out David Neff's channel. Check out Smokey's channel. His open mic nights are always a blast, and always something to remember. That's for sure. So
that's for sure.
so, thanks again, guys. Thanks to the